Good evening, members of the Council.
Mr. Mayor.
In the absence of my chaplain, will you please join me in the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation. Thine is the kingdom,
the power and the glory,
heaven and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. I have an apology for Councillor David Stanley. Are there any other apologies? Right. Sorry. Who, sorry? That all of them? Right, thank you. Declarations of interest. Any prior declarations of interest made under the Members' Code of Conduct have been published online. Interests previously disclosed by members at meetings are recorded in the minutes in the White Book, which is also published online. All of these interests will be taken as read. They are deemed as repeated at this meeting. I now invite members to declare any additional interest. No one? Right. Minutes. I move that the minutes of the extraordinary meetings held on the 26th of September and the 15th of November and the ordinary meeting held on the 8th of October be approved as correct records and signed. Does the Council agree? That is carried. My announcements. The Civic Carol Service will be on the 12th of December at St John's Church, Halzowen, started at 7:30 p.m, and all are welcome to attend. There will be a Christmas dinner in aid of my charities at the Banqueting Street Suite in Furnace Lane, Halzowen. This is on December the 20th. These details have been circulated and I will be sending them again. I now call on Councillor Melvin Mottram, who will give us an update on the Mayoral Memorial Courtyard. Councillor Mottram.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members of the Council, as you know, over the last 12 months or so, I've been working on a small project to create a memorial courtyard at the back of the Council House in what had been an unused and rather sorry state. I'm pleased to inform members that work is now well underway to creating this memorial area, and thanks to the contributions of members last year, we have seen the introduction of benches and signs. As a reference at the last full council meeting, I am now asking for a final contribution to complete this work to enable a memorial stone for the past mayors of this council from both sides of the chamber to be installed. We have all lost great friends and colleagues over the years, and they have been people who have served the residents of this borough with distinction over recent decades. I will be collecting contributions with the help of two other past mayors, Peter Miller and Steve Wolfo, at this evening's meeting outside the chamber. If all members were able to contribute £10 to this worthy project, we will be in a position to complete the memorial for Christmas and leave a lasting memorial to our former colleagues. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I recently had the pleasure of attending the Forging a Future for All Awards at the Copthorne Hotel, Brierley Hill. The awards recognise the inspirational work of individuals and organisations across the borough. It was organised to help support the Dudley Borough Vision for 2030. I now call on the leader to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended myself the meeting of partners around the Borough Vision. Regrettably, I wasn't able to attend the Forging Future for All Awards. But what I saw when I attended the meeting of partners is the united spirit to put behind this borough. And I know that the leader of the opposition was heavily involved in the Borough Vision, and we are equally committed to the Borough Vision. The Borough Vision is something that's not about political parties. It's what all sides want for the future of this borough. And in many instances, it will outlive the tenancy of those people in this chamber. But what it will deliver is a future that we can all be proud of and that we all have participated in. The sorts of partners that the Borough Vision has been able to attract means that there is widespread commitment, both outside of political parties, from statutory organisations and voluntary organisations. And I know that a lot of people here have already been involved. There is some literature around the Borough Vision, around the chamber today. What I would ask is that everybody participates in the Borough Vision, because actually this is the one time that we can start to put party politics aside and start to think about collectively what we all agree on, which is a bright future for us all in Dudley.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Patrick Harley to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and there will be a few. This is indeed a vision for the future of this borough. It's not a vision for the future of this council, and we wanted to make that, Peter and myself, very clear right from the outset that it shouldn't be politically driven. It shouldn't be a political vision set by either group leader and individual cabinets. So it was painstakingly, really was painstakingly, to try and consult with the many, many different sectors of our communities, the schools, the colleges, religious groups, the business community, volunteers. And after having endless meetings and endless suggestions that came forward, and the officers did a great job in trying to get this all in the melting pot, so that we came out with that very clear vision that makes the most of what is a really proud heritage in this borough, but also that we shouldn't just dwell on the past, we should look to the future, and that's what this vision does. And as the leader of the council has said, it's not about the politics. This should outlive, you know, several administrations, but it is a really good piece of work, and I think it's one of the most perfect examples of what happens when you do have that cross-party working. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We now move on to reports and recommendations. The Capital Programme Monitoring. I call on the leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the Council, I move that the report and its recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
No one wishes to speak, so no need to reply to it. Is that all agreed? That is carried. Governance review and scheme for the transfer of the Police and Crime Commissioner functions to the Mayoral West Midlands Combined Authority. I call on the leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have the report in front of you. Members of the Council, I move that the report and recommendations of the Cabinet be received and noted.
Thank you. Councillor Harley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Finishing that sweet, kindly given by Councillor Partridge. To get us through the agenda quite quick. Mr. Mayor, this is a good report. and it's pretty much an accurate assessment of what's gone on the combined authority over the last 6 to 12 months. I think it's vital that people join in this consultation process and get behind the plans to make the person who is in charge of the West Midlands Police Force fully accountable to this and the other 6 West Midlands authorities. And if we get this right, then by being accountable to this authority and to each of the other 7 council leaders, then we will be able to hold the Metro Mayor, make him accountable in a far better manner than we can with the current role, which is the PCC. And that's not about the politics of it. It's about just holding that role of the PCC. At the moment, we cannot hold him fully to account because of the way that role is designed. If this consultation works and it goes through, then we can hold the Metro Mayor to account, and we can make sure that we get the representation and the supervision and the direction of where we want our police force to go, and you can have 7 Met leaders holding that Metro Mayor to account. Currently, we cannot do that. So I implore members from all sides to get behind this and also to get out there and make sure that our constituents also take part in this consultation process. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Casey.
There's just a couple of things that I want to raise on this, really. And this is, as Councillor Harley said, this is an extremely important report and one that deals with the future leadership of West Midlands Police. So it's something that we should all take extremely seriously and you know, that we should be making sure that everyone takes part in. I also think it's extremely important, Mr Mayor, because it's, I think from everybody's perspective in this chamber, policing, law and order is an issue that's raised with us as local councillors every day by residents, but one that's also concerning to us as well as residents of the borough. Now, there are a number of things I think that need to be carefully examined throughout the consultation process and as a result of this report, and a range of concerns that I think really do need to be addressed before any council gives their approval to the transfer of powers to the Mayor. I mean, for example, concerns around whether sufficient attention would be paid to the police force and the service given the range of areas the Mayor has responsibility for, whether there'll be enough protection for the police service in general from being exposed to local government politics, and I understand the point that Councillor Harley made in terms of accountability, but there's obviously a range of other issues I think need to be seriously looked at. A real risk of potential funds intended solely for policing being diverted into other projects, because after all, the combined authority lead for finance would also be the lead for the West Midlands Police budget. New restrictions that will be placed on the force's ability to borrow, meaning that essential investments you know, could be stopped or delayed, which is particularly worrying in terms of the preparations being made for things like the Commonwealth Games. And I think one of the most pertinent points as well is the fact that the combined authority have already confirmed that they believe there's little scope for savings as a part of the merger proposal anyway. Now, I think one of the things we can all agree on in this chamber, Mr Mayor, is that the leadership of our police force is a full-time job and one that requires laser-like focus. So I think it's particularly worrying that there's a prospect that this could, as I said, become a part-time role, given the other responsibilities the Mayor has to deal with. Having said that, whilst the appointment of a Deputy Mayor for policing, I think, goes a small way into ensuring some focus, this would obviously be an unelected position and one that, from what I've seen, would not really have any clout to make any challenges, which is one of the most worrying things for me because of the significant cuts the police force has had to deal with over the last 8 years, with hundreds of millions of pounds being taken from the budget and police officer numbers down to the lowest point any time since the force was created. So, Mr Mayor, I think, as I said at the start, I think it's extremely important consultation, one that raises a number of concerns for the future governance of our police force. And I think all of those concerns have got to be seriously looked at and addressed before any council gives their approval to this in the new year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Crompton, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And actually, following the same vein as Councillor Casey, for the last year, I was on the Corporate Scrutiny Committee and we had a number of items come to that committee about the combined authority. And one of the things that we tried to do through that year was to try and work our way through what we saw as a morass, really, and something where accountability didn't appear to be there, at least not to this each constituency council. And I've heard nothing at the moment that tells me that the level of accountability I would want if we were going to look towards this massive step, because that's what this is, it's a massive step, that the level of accountability would be what I would want. Now, I put my hands up to this. I neither wanted an elected mayor, nor did I want an elected police commissioner. But we've got them. And we haven't tried them yet, to be quite honest. The mayor's only been there for a fleeting amount of time. The police commissioner for not very much longer. At least from our perspective, from our ward's perspective, we've actually had a meeting with the police commissioner's office, which has taken some issues in our ward a little bit further forward. How would I do that with the elected mayor? When I'd be one of how many hundreds of councillors that would want to go and see that mayor, and he's got a myriad of responsibilities. For me, one of the biggest problems we face at the moment, not just as councillors, but across our whole country, is the massive cuts to our policing. The fact that we would very rarely see anybody who is committing a crime in our wards actually taken into account. And that's been because of the funding cuts. We all know that. We've seen the lack of bobbies on the streets. So where in this paper does it tell us that that's going to get better? It doesn't. It actually raises questions about whether it could get worse, at least in the short term, while everybody works out what job they're going to do in this new thing. The other thing about this is it's a consultation paper. I've seen enough consultation papers coming out of this council, other councils and lots of other bodies where we get a one-sided statement within a consultation. And being honest, that's what appears to be in this consultation document. For me, if we as a council are going to be part of this consultation process, we should be fully debating what this consultation process actually means for us as a council. We should get the two protagonists, if we want to call them that, the police commissioner and the mayor, in front of us in this chamber to answer the questions that we and our constituents would really like to hear, the answers to some of the big questions raised by this consultation. So for me, I will be making my own put my own two penneth forward for this, but I would much rather see, Mr. Mayor and the leader, the possibility for us to actually have that debate within this chamber, to televise it as well as we can through our system, so other people in our constituency can actually see that and maybe send us questions to ask of these people, what are you going to do different in those roles that will make this worthwhile? Because everybody knows that the mayoral side of it is a very expensive way of doing things. And how we're not going to have, as Councillor Casey says, the sort of politicising of our police force, which we all know at some extent has been there for donkey's years, but will this not make this even more political? Will it make it a grandstanding moment for one or two people at the top of the mayoralty side of things? Will they, for instance, use it as a springboard for some sort of voting, a springboard for some sort of campaign in the future? That's not what we want our policing for. And those are the sorts of questions, to be quite honest, that were raised in our group meeting when we were discussing this the other night. For me, I want to see far more made available to us in this council chamber for us maybe to even put forward a Dudley Council's full answer to some of these consultation questions. Not necessarily saying we support one side or the other of this argument, but maybe asking the questions we need to get answered and putting forward some thoughts of our own about how this process goes forward. Because at the moment, Mr. Mayor, this is really, having been through that corporate scrutiny committee process for the whole of last year, when this sort of thing should properly have been before us, this is really the start of an opportunity for us to, as a council, put forward our views and the views of our people. Thank you.
Councillor Lees, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should support this move to bring the PCC under the combined authority. I don't see it as a political move at all. We already have the West Midlands Fire Service on the way, and it's going to make sure that service is fully scrutinised. It will ensure more robust scrutiny of both functions, PCC and fire. which I believe is one of the main considerations, as neither are properly scrutinised by any independent panel currently. I say this with the experience of serving on the Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and having done so for the past 18 months or so. The board comprises cross-party membership from both the 7 constituent councils and the non-constituent shires, all of whom are experienced scrutineers. Our role is to scrutinise currently the activities of the policy making and the budget setting of the Mayor's office and the board, because the Mayor is only the chair of the board, which is a democratic organisation, and that comprises of the leaders and opposition leaders from the 7 constituent councils. Scrutiny is not mature in the Combined Authority, as it is in our local councils, because it is a fairly new and evolving organisation. Additionally, our role is to critique and recommend changes to the scrutiny process, continually improve its effectiveness in conjunction with the Combined Authority's scrutiny officers. West Midlands Police is the largest police force outside of London, employing over 10,000 staff and spending over £580 million a year. While they have a police and crime panel, that is not a scrutiny function. It's not independent by any stretch of the imagination. Proper scrutiny and accountability needs to be established under the umbrella of the Combined Authority. I see in this document on page 11 there's a reference to having already looked at the sort of governance scheme and review, but no reference to our overview and scrutiny board has been made at all. It's been done in isolation. Lastly, I'll give you a fine example of the lack of scrutiny and accountability under the PCC. Closing 12 police stations while refurbishing your own head office at a cost of over £20 million. This would not have happened under the Combined Authority Scrutiny Board, and, you know, all members are in concurrence with that. So I fully support the motion. I would ask everybody else to do the same. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I will attempt to make my contribution non-partisan and non-political, but I will make the point. It may well be that the Scrutiny Board, with regard to the point that you raised, Councillor Lees, wouldn't make those points because it would be inchoate, because not enough people actually turn up to discuss that. And I think that's one of the issues that we have with regard to the Combined Authority, is that it's an evolving beast and it's not yet fully formed. Now, I welcome the consultation, and I'm quite sure, although I don't think it'll be to the degree of Brexit negotiations, I do think there will be differing views on both sides of the table, depending on whether we go down the route of the Police and Crime Commissioner. But Councillor Lees raises an important point. It's actually one of the reassurances that I will be seeking, is because my understanding, Councillor Lees, is that actually within the Combined Authority, a number of those very scrutiny committees that you refer to have often been set, but then not been able to action because not enough people from the constituent authorities have been turning up to them. So I think one of the things that we need to look at as part of the evolving Combined Authority is to ensure it's accountable to the people that it serves. Now, myself, and it's a personal view, not necessarily party political, I opposed the Police and Crime Commissioner because I didn't think, and I think I've been proven right, to be perfectly honest. I didn't think it would serve the interests of the people. I think it was an ill-thought-out political decision of its time and already seen to be outdated. I also opposed the election of a mayor. I believe in local accountability, but I think as cross-party discussions we all accepted that the only way to achieve issues such as a metro link in this proud borough was to actually take part in those devolutionary deals. But my starting position is always the Tony Benn approach, and I'm sorry if I upset people opposite in saying that. So I always think we need to ask, whether we're a Police and Crime Commissioner or indeed the Metro Mayor, who exactly are you? Where did you get your power from? In whose interests are you going to display those powers? And then most importantly, how do we get rid of you? because that is the importance when we start to look. And the one thing actually the Police and Crime Commissioner, and indeed the Mayor of the West Midlands has proven, is actually local government, us in this chamber, have a larger mandate to serve the interests of our community than either the Police and Crime Commissioner, who was elected, I believe, on 11% of the public vote, and the Mayor, who was actually elected on the back of people coming out and voting for us during the local elections. Otherwise, that would have been a significantly lower vote as well. So my personal view, and I think Councillor Harley hit the nail on the head when he talked about ensuring that those roles, if you look at devolution up and down the country, for example, those that have been most successful in driving money from central government down to devolved are those with the largest involvement. And I personally believe that any devolution should be from central government down, as opposed to what the other threat is from ourselves up. And I personally believe anything that we can do around the devolution agenda at that level actually protects metropolitan authorities such as us and the protected rights of the people that we are accountable for. And my God, we certainly know how they can get rid of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. I call on the leader to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quite honestly, I'd like to thank everybody that's participated in this discussion. It's obviously the start of a consultation. I would urge you to participate in both the consultation that's online. There is a market stall on the 8th of December. You can go along to that. There is no need for me to express my opinion on the Mayor. That's not the purpose of the consultation. The purpose of the consultation is we hear everybody's view. There was only actually one question for me, and I think it was sort of a question that came from Councillor Crumpton, and that was around whether the two people that at present is affected, whether they should form part of some discussion or debate. The Leader of the Council doesn't set the agenda for the scrutiny, and that's the role that the scrutiny should do, and you are entitled to bring who you need to.
That is carried. Annual review of the Constitution. I call on the leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the Council, I move that the report and recommendations of the Council be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Shakespeare.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a quick question. Page 58, 30, third bullet point. It says here a restriction of one question per elected member in each of the above sessions, subject to group leaders having the discretion to ask more than one question. Do you think that's rather restrictive, considering that shadow cabinet members may have more than one question to ask their opposite member? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, no one else. So I call on the leader to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I think is that when we ask people's opinion, we should listen to it, and that's what we've done.
Is that all agreed? That is carried. Medium-term financial strategy. I call on Councillor Peter Lowe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the report and recommendations of the Cabinet are approved and adopted.
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right, no need for a reply by you, Mr. Councillor Lowe. Is that all agreed? That is carried. The Youth Justice Plan. I call on Councillor Sue Ridney.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the report and recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No one again. No need for reply. Is that all agreed? That is carried. We now come to the notices of motion. Can I remind members that under Council Procedure Rule 12.5, the maximum time allowed to deal with all of the notices of motion is 30 minutes. If the notices of motion are not dealt with within 30 minutes, they will be referred to the next ordinary meeting of the Council. I now call on Councillor Karen Shakespeare to move the motion in her name as set out on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The notice of motion before you tonight is asking you to support representations to government and asking for support from the LGA to consider a ban on the sale of Category 3 fireworks to the general public and review the hours of permitted use of all fireworks. I would also propose that in the event that government are not willing or able to act on a national basis, that they give local authorities the powers to make local orders or bylaws limiting the sale. In recent years, there can be no doubt that the availability and use of high-powered fireworks has grown as prices have dropped. We have major retailers and supermarkets all over the country selling massive thunderclap fireworks that in the past would normally only be sold for organised displays. These fireworks now impact on thousands of people, including vulnerable members of our community, animals and wildlife. It is no longer about bonfire night. The tendency to set off fireworks for celebrations and events throughout the year, including weddings, birthdays, and particularly from Halloween until the first week of January, high-powered fireworks are being let off randomly night after night. There is a regular debate about whether we have enough police resources available to deal with serious crimes, and at the same time, our current firework laws expects them to find and stop individuals from setting off fireworks late at night. An impossible and frankly unnecessary task if we were allowed to exercise some control over their supply. Any law that is unenforceable is a bad law and encourages people to hold the law in contempt. The size and power of fireworks available for use in gardens are in excess of 120 decibels, which is pain to the human ear, equivalent to a jet engine taking off. Safety advice for Category 3 fireworks state that you need to be 25 metres away, that's 82 foot all round. Where in an urban area like ours do you have properties with this size garden? I don't know of any, there may not be. The fire service would support a complete ban on fireworks as they are unsafe by their very nature, and there have been numerous incidents across the country where fireworks are putting our dedicated firefighters at even more risk. Northern Ireland have banned fireworks. Scotland are carrying out a consultation. If they can, why can't we? In Australia, a country renowned for its commitment to individual freedoms, they have banned all fireworks except for officially licensed events. Sadly, from the debate I watched in Parliament last week, the Minister does not seem to have an appetite for change, even though there have been 3 debates in Parliament, 2 this year, with hundreds of thousands of people signing online petitions for our laws to be reviewed and plenty of anecdotal evidence provided. Animals, dogs particularly, have elevated fear levels which can last for days and longer. Governments are ignoring the impact on our animals, our residents, and their fear, terror and distress will never be linked to fireworks. Having dogs myself, I see firsthand them shaking and panting with fear when these bombs go off. Other dogs bark incessantly, cats bolt for shelter. It just can't be right. In one local constituency alone, there were 42 instances where fireworks caused harm to horses this year. 2 killed, 20 injured, and 2 more where the mares aborted their foals. People with PTSD, service people who have served their country, those that have suffered from terrorist attacks have to listen to these random fireworks even on bonfire night. You might be prepared for them, but each individual explosion comes repeatedly and randomly, and you can't prepare for that. Respect has been lost, and the enjoyment for a few now impacts on everyone that we, as a society, purport to care for. Please support this notice of motion. We need to take action if we care. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Baton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to thank Councillor Shakespeare for this particular motion because it is a very timely one with Bonfire Night just behind us and all the other fireworks celebrations and with New Year's Eve still to come. The noise, the danger, the antisocial behaviour that these events undoubtedly bring to us. Firework regulations in 2004 introduced rules in sales, possession and use. Categories F2 and F3 are limited to certain dates in the year for sales, state a maximum decibel level, you're quite right, of 120, and forbid anyone under the age of 18 possessing them in a public place. However, that decibel limit is for a singular firework. What it doesn't take into account is the cumulative effect of many explosions taking place together. And as with all regulations, as Councillor Shakespeare has said, there needs to be the capacity to enforce them. There's an 11 p.m. curfew, but police have to catch offenders. And with the national reduction in officers of over 21,000 since 2010, that's a near impossible task and not a priority either for our overstretched officers. In local authorities, trading standards have been cut and their powers reduced to sales enforcement of age-restricted products. Nationally, admissions to hospitals for firework-related injuries have been on the increase, and so much so that I understand that the British Association of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgeons have called for fireworks to be sold in boxes that display pictures of the horrific injuries caused by fireworks. Animal charities are calling for a reduction in the F3 decibel level to 97 and to move to licensed displays only. Air pollution, particulate matter PM2.5, hugely increased on November the 5th, presents completely unnecessary risks to all of our health. Demands on the emergency services, crews being attacked with fireworks, all demonstrate that when handled irresponsibly, they cause huge problems. In the recent parliamentary debate on the 26th of November, Helen Jones MP did make a good point, I thought, when she said that actually fireworks don't cause antisocial behaviour, just as knives don't cause knifings. It's the irresponsible people that are actually in control of them. So I fully support the motion to lobby government and the LGA to effectively regulate the sale of fireworks and to remove Category 3 from public sale. And I would hope that even a government that boasts about its levels of deregulation surely sees the sense in tougher laws. Maybe we should also include in that lobby that if they won't ban the sale of F3s, then as the motion calls for local authorities to have local bylaws to restrict perhaps the age of sale to over 21s. However, whatever regulation we have, it is only effective if we have the necessary funding and resources of all of the enforcement agencies to make sure that those laws are carried out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I join with probably a number of people in the chamber in saying thank you, Councillor Shakespeare, for bringing this motion forward. It really is a very pertinent and important area for all of us, local councillors. We will all have already had the phone calls and the complaints this year, and rather than just staying around Guy Fawkes Night or around New Year, those calls are now coming in all year round. Despite attempts to change both the legislation for both the sale and the use of fireworks, and I guess most politicians are really very reluctant to be labelled killjoys, we do want to see people enjoy their traditional pleasures. However, we may have to accept, and people may have to accept, that they have to be dealt with in a different way and enjoyed in a different way to they have done in the past. Because if you think about it and put it into perspective, We are talking about explosives here, not just bright lights. It seemed to me when I thought through this motion that anecdotally, perhaps, the safety record appeared to have improved. Because when you go out to investigate and have a look at what's on social media and what gets thrown on the Facebook and other areas where people advertise, we no longer see the horror stories that maybe I certainly remember as a child in the past, where we all had to, we were indoctrinated with the fireworks code and warnings that were broadcast annually before the 4th of November. And after the 4th of November, there was always a local story about burns and accidents. I found it very hard to find any accident-related figures, so thank you, Councillor Baton, for filling that gap. I certainly welcomed when it came through the banning of firecrackers and shells in mortars, because they really were a big nuisance. We had lots of complaints about those in the Brierley Hill ward. Going back and thinking about the current regulations and legislations, at the moment, if you go out and you buy a category F2 firework, then you have to be either 8 metres or 15 metres distant in order to actually fire it off or to watch. And as you've already explained, Councillor Shakespeare, for category 3 you need 25 metres. Now, even on 8 metres with a firework that that you can fire and observe, that seems a little bit cosy to anybody who's been sat on the planning committee with most of the modern homes and the sizes of the amenity space that planning applications tend to go through on now. We certainly bump into some practicalities these days around actually having just a standard firework party at home with the family in the size of gardens that most people now have. You could say, because I'll pick up the point that, again, Councillor Baton's made, and I think Councillor Shakespeare, you certainly brought forward, as an ordinary consumer, there is lots of information available about how to use fireworks safely. And the legislation is there on social media. It's there elsewhere for everyone to read and to take note of. But one of the key issues is this gradual creep that has come year on year of when people expect to be able to use fireworks. So rather than taking note of what the law says, they just carry on it anyway. So to remind you, you should not be let off between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. except on.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Your time's up. Do we all agree that we now put the vote?
Although I fully support the motion, but to keep the government a robust set of communications, Mr. Mayor, on this motion, can we hear the remainder of the speakers if there are any?
We have got another 7 people wishing to speak.
It's up to the members whether they wish the vote to be put.
Yes. So take a vote on it.
We'd better take a vote on it. There seems to be inside.
This is voting. Let me be clear. This is voting whether.
Members of the Council, can I have your attention, please? We're about to take a vote on whether the motion should be put, not on the motion itself. Will all those who wish to have the motion put vote yes? That's about it.
That's it.
So he has the right to reply first.
Yes, he has the right.
Right. The result being that the motion be put. Before it is put, I give Councillor Karen Shakespeare the right to reply to the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for both of the speakers that have supported the notice of motion. I know there's a lot of people in this room that feel very passionate and would like to have their say, because this is an issue that affects every single one of the councillors here, and I'm sure that everybody has had the phone calls that I've had. It's been 15 years since the laws were reviewed, and really it is about time for things to change. As Councillor Harris said, you know, the accident record seems improved, but it's different now. It's continuous, it's random throughout the year, and the noise level is an issue that affects not only our elderly, our animals, our service people, but also, you know, I've had calls from parents who've got children with autism and the effects that it has on them. We've had people with mental health problems that also get affected, and these are the people we care about in this borough. We all care about our animals. So thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the support that we've had, and I hope that this motion will be put forward and accepted by the whole of this council. Thank you.
Does the council agree with the motion? Thank you. We now move on to the second motion, and I call on Councillor Ruth Buttery to move the motion in her name as set out on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under the Council's own strategy of whole system approach to obesity in 2016, it was agreed with the Children and Young People's Alliance to move away from the traditional approach to obesity, which focused on targeted services, to a wider vision to create an environment and culture where adults and children have the opportunity to maintain a healthy weight by making changes to the environment and by encouraging people to have healthy lifestyles. This is a health and well-being board priority. We all know that Dudley sadly has a childhood obesity issue, and that nationally there's been an increase in childhood mental health issues. And as a frontline NHS worker for over 20 years, I've seen firsthand the distress of a child that has drowned. What do neighbouring authorities do? Wolverhampton has free swimming for under 16s, and Sandwell has free swimming for under 16s in the school holidays, and Dudley charge for swimming. So that is why we brought in the positive, proactive strategy this summer of free swimming for all Dudley children aged 16 and under. I realised that we put the trial through at relatively short notice, which was a challenge for all our council staff, which they rose to magnificently. So I would like to have it publicly recorded that I would like to extend my thanks to all the council employees for their professionalism and commitment to this amazing borough and its residents day in and day out every day of the year. And what an amazing uptake for the free swimming offer we had, with over 25,000 people registering from all across the borough with no geographical differences. Over 28,000 visits to the swimming pools. The most popular reason to register for the scheme was to be active. Over 30% of the swimmers did not usually use our leisure centres, and this is why we want to keep this scheme going, so that every school holiday Dudley children have a safe and active place to go, thus helping to encourage long-term with physical activity. It gets families together as children under 8 have to swim with an adult. Plus, you can't take a mobile phone into the pool, so this also helps with young people's mental health. And thankfully, we had no fatalities this summer, which, given the heat wave we had, meant that Dudley children chose to swim in our safe, life-guarded pools rather than unsafe, unlife-guarded open water. So I hope you will all support me in this motion and give our children a great early Christmas present. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This scheme put over in the summer was probably one of the most amazing things that we have seen for young people in the Dudley Borough. We saw 28,000 young people in this borough using our leisure centres for free, getting them out to be active in the summer holidays. During school term time, young people have the chance to go through physical education and get active, but when it comes to the school holidays, there isn't anything encouraging young people to get out and be active, and this initiative put forward that engagement and opportunity for those young people to get out and be active. As you know, 20% of young people experience mental health issues in any given year. And as you might know, 1 hour of exercise a week can reduce depression by a half. That is important because with young people and increasing mental health issues across the country, we need to be proactive in ensuring that our young people are getting out, being active, and also tackling the obesity crisis that we see in the borough. The policy was very popular. In 24 hours on social media, it received over 200,000 hits on Facebook, and I personally feel it's ridiculous that we're seeing an authority at the moment and the controlling group that would rip these opportunities out the young people's hands. Why are we not giving these opportunities to young people? This policy is important to the young people of this borough, and personally for me, during school holidays with my peer group, and children who are only 3 years old, younger than myself, they deserve this opportunity during the summer holidays to get out, be active, and also have fun with their friends. That personally for me is what's most important about this policy, about ensuring that young people have opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Crompton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really weird, isn't it? You know, 15 years ago, I stood up in this council chamber, yeah, and I remember shouting at the group that was over there at the time, some of whom are still there, and some of whom who were over our side were still here. And it was about the destruction, the obscene destruction, of Bridal Leisure Centre, which the Tories at the time did to us in this borough. Now, we've moved on. We have a different Tory group in there. And we have one which... There is nobody in this chamber who won't welcome the idea that we had children being able to use the swimming baths who otherwise wouldn't have done last summer. There were difficulties, and there are always going to be teething difficulties with these sort of things. And one of the problems that we face is that if we want a real uptake amongst our youngsters, not just of swimming, because that doesn't suit everybody, but of all of the other opportunities we'd love to give our kids, we need more swimming baths, don't we? We need more leisure centres, as they call them now. We need far more, however, of everything else. Now, this is a place where we talk about politics sometimes, don't we? And the politics of the situation for us, for our youth at the moment, is that the heart has been ripped out of our communities by the total and destructive manner in which the government has done the cuts to the things that we used to provide. We had the Youth Justice Plan just a while ago, haven't we? If you looked at the figures within that and the sort of areas that we were talking about, where all of those youth services have been ripped out of our local communities. Because the swimming pool, I will never, ever decry the fact that you had this policy last year. And within our group, I mean, one thing I would say to the councillor that just, I've forgotten his name, the young man there, who's just got up. I'm not very good with names, right? Councillor Cooper, that's it. The one thing I would say is that we, as a group, We have not said what we're going to be doing about this. We've only just come into power. You know, give us a couple of weeks to have a look at things. But what I'd say is, it's all right having a motion like this about the free swimming, but that might be once a week for an hour or so for a child, yeah? And that's all it's going to be. And that ain't going to, I mean, if I was going there, it ain't going to make no difference to this, is it, for me? And it's not going to make much difference to the obesity of the child. What we need is an actual plan for our children. We need far more than currently we have on the table. Because you look at that 15 years ago, we did have youth services. You look 25 years ago, and we had a huge amount of work done with the youth in our borough. Okay, it wasn't open for all and not everybody took it up, but the opportunities were there for our children to take. And that is what I would like us to be looking at tonight. It's not just about this, which again, nobody's going to vote against this motion, are they? We'd be stupid to. It's just, it's there and it says, request the Cabinet to consider the implications in the revenue budget process. Okay, so they will. But actually what we should be doing as a council altogether is going to this government and saying, when are you going to realise that the cuts that you are placing upon our communities, the destructive nature of universal credit, and all of the other policies which are going through this government which is stuck in its own morass at the moment, is it, with the Brexit negotiations, which have overtaken everything, and which, being honest, for most of the people in the streets, it matters nothing, the Brexit negotiation, compared to the fact they've got no food on the table. They're having the DWP telling them and giving them vouchers to go to food banks. The disgusting nature of that, the obscenity of a society that's doing that, a rich society like ours. We should be looking at actually providing the proper youth services that our kids deserve. You know, you look around and see what isn't in your wards. You tell me what actually happens for the youth in your wards, and then you tell me what you're willing to do about it, and whether you would join with, if we all joined together and went back to this Tory government and said, Dudley deserves a damn sight more money. It deserves a fair share of what we need down here to be able to provide some of the services that our kids actually need. So I'll fully support this motion. And I really thank you for bringing it forward. You know, and actually, it's something I do believe passionately in. But remember, this is a tiny proportion of what we actually need for our kids in this borough.
To the point of order, Mr. Mayor, we seem to be in agreement, so why prolong the agony until the next council meeting? I propose that the vote be put.
Is that seconded?
There's only 3 minutes to go, Mr.
No. What?
There are a lot of speakers, and by the feeling of the council, it seems as though we've got a lot. The time, we've got about 1 minute to go, so I will cut it short and move it to the next meeting. There's too many that wanted to speak on it. No, I thought I'd give them the right to, which they can do at the next meeting. Not really, but the time was up. Let's talk it out. Right, we're on the... Right, that brings us to questions under Council Procedure Rule 11. At the last ordinary meeting of the Council, we piloted a new way of operating the question time session. Feedback from the pilot is being reported to the Cabinet on the 6th of December. In the meantime, we will be operating tonight's question time under the procedures in the existing Council Procedure Rule 11. I will ask members to indicate if they wish to ask any questions in relation to the minutes and delegated decision summaries in the White Book. I will take questions in the order that the matters appear in the list, and I will deal with one question at a time. That is, the question and then the answer to it, before moving on to the next question, and so on. Can I remind members that the purpose of Council Procedure Rule 11 is to allow questions Members will have the chance to speak on individual questions. However, any comments made should be relevant to the question that is under consideration. The Cabinet, dated 25th of October. Councillor Richards, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I refer to page 9, paragraph 27, on the leisure centres. So, just wondering what the updated timescales are. Are we going to be sticking to 2022 as the goal for them to be completed, so the year of the Commonwealth Games? Wondering what consultations happened. Are we looking at what provision we're short on in the borough? How are we going to compete with private gyms in the area that are open 24/7? And are there any facilities that we can offer that the private companies can't? So I'd like to know what the plans are and updates on the plans for the new buildings, because the first draft, it was less than uninspiring. Thank
you. Call on Councillor Zada to reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the leisure centre redevelopment, of course we're working to what we signed up to before, and we're at the design stage at the minute. There will be consultation of how we can make sure that the footfall increases, and it's in an area that obviously generates the competitive nature, addresses some of that around the 24/7 gyms, and also gyms that are low cost too. So yes, there is still a lot of work to do around that. At the moment we're at the design stage of the new and the refurbishment part of the leisure centres.
Children's Services Scrutiny Committee, dated 27th of September. No. Corporate Scrutiny Committee, dated 25th of September. Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Committee, dated 25th of September. Appeals Committee, dated 10th of October. Adult and Standards Committee, dated 24th of September. Development Control Committee, dated 9th of October and 6th of November. Ernest Stevens Trust Management Committee, dated 23rd of October. Councillor Sue Ridney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you very much to the Chair and Vice Chair for inviting me along to that meeting. But as you note in the minutes, I did raise an issue about the mugger on the Cosley Youth Centre site, asking for could we have a gate move so that it could be open to the public for use for the community. I still haven't had anything back.
Councillor Kettle to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a meeting tomorrow. I'll take it up for the issue. There is another one concerning the visits. I'll raise that also. I'll sort it tomorrow.
Licensing and Safety Committee, dated 7th of November. Licensing Subcommittee 1, dated 16th of October. Taxes Committee, dated 11th of October and 8th of November. Delegated decision summaries involving the following members: Councillor Khurshid Ahmed, decisions 1 to 4. Councillor Catherine Bayton, decision 5. Councillor Rachel Harris, decision 6. Councillor John Martin, decision 7. Councillor Sue Ridney, decisions 8 to 10. Councillor Laura Taylor, decision 11. Councillor Quader Zada, decision 12. Councillor Phipps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please could the leader confirm if a reduction in the cost of this contract was requested when deciding to extend the contract, as was standard practice under the last administration, and if this was reviewed by the procurement team when determining whether or not to extend the contract? Thank you.
Councillor Zada to reply.
The contract, as I believe it was extended on the terms that was agreed originally, which was competitive at the time.
Action notes of the Netherton, Woodside and St Andrews and Quarry Bank and Dudley Wood Community Forum, dated 1st of October. There is no urgent business, so that concludes this meeting of the Council. I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a peaceful, prosperous New Year. Members and officers are now invited to join me in the parlour for refreshments. Thank you.